of Israel. Joining me now is Karen Pollock from the Holocaust Educational Trust and Ben Kentish, who's the political correspondent for The Independent. Welcome to you both. Do you think, first of all, Karen, that this will be enough to draw a line under actually the last 3 years of debate and discussion about anti-Semitism within the Labour Party?
I think there are a few things to say. The first is this is just hot off the press, so I'm yet to read the Labour Party's statement, but my instinct here is good that they've adopted the IHRA definition and examples. However, if you add a clause that undermines the examples, then I wonder where exactly that goes. But as I say, I need to see the statement myself. But actually, there's a much more important point for me, and I think for members of the Jewish community and anybody who's committed to fighting racism and anti-Semitism. This IHRA definition has been a symptom, in my view, of the problem for the Labour Party. We have had, as you said, it's not just a week or a month, it has been now years of a series of anti-Semitic incidents within the mainstream political party. It's not been dealt with in an appropriate way. People haven't been disciplined in a robust and efficient way. People calling out anti-Semitism are punished. And I'm afraid there is a really cultural problem that needs to change. The IHRA definition is an important point, but it is not certainly the end of the problem.
Ben, would you agree with that? The definition has been adopted, but as Karen is saying, there's this free speech clause which has been included, which perhaps negates what everybody was expecting.
I do. I think it's welcome that the definition has been adopted, firstly. I don't have a major issue with this free speech clause. I think it was superfluous. I'm not sure it was necessary. That said, there's been a hell of a lot of nonsense, frankly, that's been said for the last few weeks, the last couple of months, about the impact of IHRA, about the impact that definition would have on what people are allowed to say about Israel. I think there's been a lot of false claims about its stifling criticism of the Israeli government and the treatment of the Palestinians. I don't think that is the case, but having said that, given that that narrative is there, I can understand why the Labour leadership felt that it needed to issue that sort of statement, more for political reasons. But I think that's the point, really, is that this has become a politicised debate, and something that 2 months ago should have been done behind the scenes in consultation with the Jewish community has turned into a free-for-all where everyone feels they have a say, everyone wants to have their opinion. And actually what we've seen is the real fears and the concerns of the Jewish community being at best not properly listened to and at worst actually actively shouted down on this issue. So I think adopting IHRA was absolutely the baseline, it was absolutely the bare minimum that the Labour leadership needed to do. Having said that, is a very small step, I think, on a path to rebuilding the relationship between the party and the Jewish community, which if this had been adopted 2 months ago, I don't think would have been a major problem. I think if they'd adopted definition with these clarifications around free speech, there might have been some criticism, but it would not have erupted and engulfed the party in the way it has for the last few weeks. And I think there's a real sense now of why on earth didn't this happen sooner? Why wasn't there proper consultation initially? And why have we spent the whole summer and ultimately, there's been this enormous pressure for the party to do this. And there is a sense, I think, in parts of the community that they've now only responded to that pressure somewhat begrudgingly. And while it will be welcome that they've adopted IHRA, I don't think it's the end of the matter by a long way. And there will be a series of further actions needed in the months ahead.
Karen, do you lay a lot of the criticism firmly at the door of Jeremy Corbyn, the party leader, the individual?
Well, I've got a couple of comments to make. First of all, with great respect to Ben, whose opinion I value highly. A number of countries have adopted this definition and examples. The Crown Prosecution Service has adopted this definition and examples. It provides a framework, and I do question the motivation of an extra clause that ultimately I do wonder whether this is going to negate some of the examples given in the definition. But moving away from IHRA, as I said originally, there is a wider issue, and you've asked me about the Labour leader. My worry is that we shouldn't have got to this place. A mainstream political party leader should reject anti-Semitism outrightly, say that anti-Semitism should not be espoused in his name, that people who say it's a smear are wrong. I just can't quite believe that in 2018 we're dealing with this. And I should say that, on social media, but more widely in conversation, some of the things that we are hearing It's worrying, and I think leaders should lead and take real action.
Ben, do you think we're looking now at questions as to whether Jeremy Corbyn can continue to lead the Labour Party? Might we see calls for him to step down? Because some might say that because of him, because of his involvement and his past history, he's now tainted the party forevermore.
Well, we've already seen calls for him to step down in some quarters. I think he's very safe as Labour leader as long as the Labour membership is still behind him. We've seen absolutely no sign at all this summer, despite events that has changed. That said, there is a very real risk now, I think, of more MPs. We've already seen 3 quitting the party. We've only seen one of those, Frank Phil, over this issue. But there is very real anger that has emerged and deepened this summer over the issue of anti-Semitism, particularly in the Parliamentary Labour Party. I think fractures have emerged that were there before, they've deepened. And actually it's going to take a long, long time and a very concerted effort needed from the Labour leadership, I think, to try and heal some of those divisions. I think, as I say, adopting IHRA is the first step, but I think Karen's absolutely right. This definition had become a totem, really, of amongst Jewish people how seriously the Labour leadership was willing to listen, to understand, to engage and register their concerns. It's done it 2 months later. I think for some, they were waiting to see whether the party would take those fears seriously, and I think for many people in the Jewish community it's come too late. Jeremy Corbyn is going nowhere as Labour leader, but let's not underestimate the damage amongst his own MPs that I think this row's done, and I think that will rumble on into the coming months, obviously doubled with Brexit, where there's also a lot of hostility towards him from the Parliamentary Party. Amongst members, though, I think very little has changed in the last few months.
I just want to read you a statement that we've just got in from the Labour Party. This is from a spokesperson that says the NEC has today adopted all of the IHRA examples of anti-Semitism in addition to the IHRA definition which Labour adopted in 2016, alongside a statement which ensures this will not in any way undermine freedom of expression on Israel or the rights of Palestinians. The NEC welcomed Jeremy Corbyn's statement to the meeting about action against anti-Semitism, solidarity with the Jewish community and protection of Palestinian rights as an important contribution to the consultation on Labour's Code of Conduct. Karen Pollock, do you think this will allay the fears of very many Jewish people who are now saying that actually if Jeremy Corbyn were ever to get into power, they would leave the country?
You know, the National Executive Committee only recently, I think yesterday, re-elected somebody who a few weeks ago was exposed for anti-Semitic rants at an NEC meeting where the Labour leader and others sat in silence. So to me, hearing from the NEC their solidarity with the Jewish community, I'm sorry if I can't wholeheartedly say, oh, what a relief. I think there are concerns. Next week we mark the Jewish New Year. Families are going to be sitting around the table and we're going to be talking about anti-Semitism in the UK in 2018. What a sorry state of affairs and what a stain on a party that, you know, I always understood to have values of anti-racism and, you know, I think none of us can really believe we are where we are.
And Ben Kentish, as Karen alludes to, that the Labour Party has traditionally been the home of Jewish people. So, I mean, to get to the stage where they're saying if they ever got in power, they would leave the country is a very, very sad day.
I think it is, and I think those fears are very widespread. I think this summer, any trust that did remain between the party and the vast, vast majority of the Jewish community has been eroded to the point, I don't want to say of no return, but it's certainly going to take a humongous effort to rebuild that. And actually, as I say, IHRA was a totem and people just did not feel they were being listened to. I think the Jewish community, even now, does not feel that the concerns are being taken seriously, and not just by the party leadership, but by party members. We've seen Labour MPs kind of going and standing with people who have been expelled from the party for anti-Semitism. And the fears are very, very real. And I think, you know, IHRA became a kind of symbol, and just because the party's adopted it today, I don't think that's going to go away, and I fully agree with Karen about what needs to be done to build those bridges again.
And Karen, it's not simply a domestic issue, is it now? Several weeks ago, we had Benjamin Netanyahu wading in and saying that this was a very, very serious issue and a very serious comment from Jeremy Corbyn. So it is an international story, this now.
The story of anti-Semitism is a human story and therefore a global one. Ultimately, if we believe that we are against all forms of racism, a line that the Labour leader has used on a number of occasions, you have to demonstrate it, not just in words. You have to do something. And so it's no surprise to me that international figures have their attention drawn to what's going on in this country. Ultimately, Jewish people are integrated into British life. We don't want to talk about anti-Semitism on our newspaper headlines and daily broadcast. And we expect our political leaders to take a stand. You know, I run a charity. It's educating about the past. But one of the key lessons is about not standing by, about when you witness injustice, speaking out. And I'm afraid we've just not seen that from the Labour leadership. And it's a very worrying state of affairs.
Ben Kentish, very quickly, can Labour come back from this?
Well, there's no significant evidence politically that it's damaged Labour in the polls. But I think what Labour needs to do now is really listen and engage with the Jewish community. I think Jewish people are frankly sick to death of being told by people who have never experienced anti-Semitism and never will, who don't understand what it's like to have a secure armed guards outside your children's school or barbed wire fences around your cemeteries. I think those concerns need to be listened to, taken much more seriously. And hopefully in the coming months and the coming years, and we are talking about a long time frame now, gradually over time with the right political will, the damage that has been done this summer will start to begin to be reversed and those bridges built. But as I said before, it's going to take a long, long time. And I think it really needs more of an effort, frankly, from the Labour Party as a whole, membership and leadership, and MPs even, than we've seen this summer.
Ben Kentish and Karen Pollock, thank you both for speaking to us. Thank you. This is